Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So the last time we looked at the first plan on when to push this pawn on the 6th rank to the 7th rank, and today we're going to take a look at the second plan. And today's plan is basically to sacrifice this pawn just in order to get the pawns on the other side of the board, and you have to make sure that you get enough pawns to then just win the game. So I just have one example on this theme here, so it's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter video, but I mean it's okay. I hope that it's going to be useful. Okay, so as you can see, we have this pawn on the A file, which is still on the 6th rank, and some other pawns here on this side of the board. And after watching this video and maybe analyzing this game, you're going to be able to see these ideas probably also in your games. As you can see, white in this position has to do something, because if he just pushes his pawn to the 7th rank, then you can see what happens. Black is going to check you, and you have to go to you have to go to the 1st rank, and then he's going to play king to f3, and you really don't want this. This is probably just a drone, and you really don't want this. You want to win this game, right? That's why white played f3 in this position. And this is a very good move, because if black takes the pawn, which he can't, because you can just check the king and it has like no squares, it has to go there, and then you just take the rook. So this is not possible here for black, so black's king has to move. And he moved the king to this f5 square. I think that this would also be fine, but you know, it's better to move it to this f5 square so you don't have problems with like a7 and then, you know, checks and promotions to a queen. So this was really a pretty good decision by black here. And now white just decided to push a7. And what was his idea? As you can see, when white pushes to a7, this means that this rook is going to be stuck on defending this pawn, and this king must have some shelter here from the checks, you know, promotions. So it's pretty dangerous for black, and you can a lot of times see some tactical ideas for white here to win the game, and you're going to see this in a couple of moves here. Okay, so black just checked to white's king, because what else is he going to do? And white moved to this d3 square. And after rook to a1, we see this tactical idea here for white, but I mean it's not working here, but it's a good idea to know, and it's g4. And now why it is not working? It's not working because black can just simply play king to f4, and I mean what are you going to do? But the point was that if you take the pawn, white recaptures, and when you take it back, you can see this h5 move. Just a stunning move, because he can't take it with this pawn, because you can see the king lost his shelter from the checks, and white can just check him and then promote to a queen, which is of course winning. And he also can't take it with a king, because again he has no shelter and white is going to win the game. But okay, this doesn't work here because black has king to f4, so that's why white just moved his king to this d4 square. And what is his plan? Obviously he can't do anything with the rook because black would just take the pawn here, and I mean he can't do much. The only plan here for white is to march over to this king side, and then when he's here, the idea is to sacrifice this pawn for the other pawns. He could play something like rook to g8 and then just take his pawns. This is really the only idea here for white to just win the game. And because white saw that, that's why he pushed the pawn from the 6th rank to the 7th rank. So okay, let's see what happened here. Black just played rook to a5, not allowing white to go anywhere further. So that's why white had to move to the queen side to attack the rook, and he played king to c4. Now we can see rook to a3, and king starts to march up the board with king to c5, and now taking the pawn is really not working, because you can see that you're going to have to give up your rook for a pawn here. And you may say that you could draw this with black, but you know, I don't think so. After this move, this is going to be winning for white, and this really doesn't work. So after king to c5, black just played rook to a1, and it looks really boring here for black. He just has to defend this pawn, and this king can't move because, you know, he has no shelter. So white is really happier here in this position than black, and he just played king to d6, just happily going to his final destination here on h6. And now we can see rook to a3, he has nothing to do, king to e7, rook to a6, king to f7, rook to a3, king to g7, you already know the plan, rook to a1, and king to h6. Like we said, black has nothing to do, so white has all the time on the world to come to this final destination and just sacrifice this pawn for the other pawns here. Guys, that's the only way to win here. Black played rook to a6, and now we can see this sacrifice of a pawn. Rook to b8. And here the point is obvious. Black just has to take this pawn because otherwise, you know, white is going to promote a queen. So he takes it, and now rook to b5. I'm sure you saw it. And now black has to move. The only square is this e6 square. And now the king is not protecting this pawn anymore, so we can just easily take it off the board. And now what is black going to do? You can see that he's also going to lose this pawn or this pawn after something like this, or just king takes this pawn. So your plan was really successful here. What can black do? Not much actually. He just played rook to a8. White just took a pawn on h5, which is normal, and black played rook to g8, trying to take this pawn off, but white is of course not going to just give this pawn to him. So he played g4, this pawn is defended, and after rook to h8 and king to g6, black resigned the game. Because if he takes this pawn here, then, I mean, it's obvious, white can check the king, and then, you know, just take this pawn, and white is 2 pawns ahead, which are really just, you know, that's just over. They're just going to march up the board and promote the queen, get the rook, and it's just going to be over. So it's really important here to just remember this idea about when to push this pawn to the 7th rank. So today's plan was to push the pawn to the 7th rank in order to sacrifice it then and just get the pawns on the other side of the board, and you must be sure to get enough pawns to win the game. So it's really useful to keep this idea in mind because, you know, it could save you some games. And I really hope that this video helped you, and if it did, please share it and give me some feedback in the comments, guys. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.